Hello and welcome back to Tip the Footy, the site that is more than just tips. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through the 20 Premier League sides and where we think they'll finish in the league. This is a two-part episode, so this is the part that is doing 20th till 11th. And if you don't find your club in here, or you're surprised to find your club not in here, then you might want to check over the part 1 to see whereabouts we believe that you'll finish. So make sure you check out that video later on. These will be released, I imagine, or I'm trying to make sure they're both released on the same day. I wouldn't have thought that they will be very far apart from each other. We are trying to get them all uploaded so you can see both. Obviously, with it being Premier League predictions, you might find yourself a fan of any club disagreeing with this particular assumption of where you'll finish in the league. If that's the case, make sure you get in the comments. Tell us where you actually think you'll finish. Give us the club, obviously, that you support, and we'll see how things go. There may be one or two shocks along the way. It's just the way that I see the table forming at the end of the league. So have a little look and see what you think. So at 20th, we're going to go with Brighton. Now, that might come as a bit of a shock because obviously they've been 2 seasons in the Premier League now. The issue I've got with Brighton is I don't believe they've done enough transfer business. I don't think they were particularly strong last season. I think they were very lucky to stay up. I think with Cardiff, obviously with everything that happened over the January transfer window, and obviously massively rest in peace to Salah, I think that could have had a galvanising effect on Cardiff, which almost, I think, the last few games of the season, there was always a shout that maybe Brighton could go down at the expense of Cardiff. Brighton were, I feel, a reasonable side. I feel that this time round, I think they're going to finish bottom. The reason I think that is that I don't believe they've got enough decent players coming in. I think that if you look at the transfer business they've done, isn't massively impressive. Obviously, the lad from Ghent, I think, who's come in, Dessard, is it? I think decent enough left-sided player. I just don't feel that they've got enough in terms going forward. I don't think they score enough goals. The Knockaert situation as well, I find that a little bit strange. Obviously, letting him go to Fulham, I think that he's creative enough. I think he's a Premier League player. I don't think he's a Championship player. I think he is able to contribute to a Premier League side. I think to see him not there and to be relying on Glenn Murray, who's 846, I think now. So I don't see where the goals are coming from. And I think that when you are trying to stay in the division, you have to have firepower as well as defensive solidity. So I think Brighton are going to be bottom. I don't believe they're going to have enough to stay up, and I don't think they're going to have a very good season at all. I understand one of the weird things about like Chris Hughton. I thought that was a strange decision to relieve him of his duties. I think that he is a competent manager. I'm not going to say he's the best manager in the world because it's not the case, but I think he's very competent, and I think that he probably could have kept Brighton up again this season, because I think that what we saw at the end of the last season, that players are willing to lay on the line for him. Now, obviously, Graham Potter's stock has risen through his Osterson's time, and he did reasonably well with Swansea. I don't see this jump being appropriate at this stage. I think he'd been better off staying at Swansea, maybe getting them up, and then having a season with them in the Premier League. I think that would have served him better. Basically, as his name suggests, Potter, he's going to have to pull up a magic trick in order to keep Brighton in the league. So at 19, we're looking at Sheffield United. Now, I would like to see is how well that Billy Sharp does. I think it'd be interesting to see how he gets on in the Premier League. I think that they've not done enough business, bearing in mind where they were last season. They played some good football. I think Wilder's done a really good job there. I think this may be a little bit too much. I think based on obviously they've got Jagielka in. I think he's a solid centre-half. I think he's gone home, and they may not concede as many goals as most people think. I just don't think they've got enough to get over the line. I think they're going to end up in 19th position. I don't think they're going to do very well. Obviously, with all newly promoted sides, there's always that surprise factor, and they could be a surprise package. Who knows? I just don't see them being a team who's going to really compete or worry a lot of teams in the Premier League. I think if they can maybe make their home ground a fortress, Bramall Lane, then possibly there's an avenue for them to stay up. But I believe 19th is a fair assessment of where I believe they're going to be at the end of the season. So in 18th, we're going to go with Norwich City. I like Norwich. I think they're a very good team. I think they played really well last season. I think Daniel Farke had done an absolutely superb job there. I think a lot will ride on the fact of whether Teemu Pukki can deliver the same level of goals in the Championship, or not even maybe the same level, but at least a consistent level of goals in the Premier League, which is obviously a very different league. So there's very different demands. Defenders in general, when you come across them in the Premier League, are going to be far more dangerous or far more hard to break down than they are in the Championship. I think Norwich conceded far too many goals last season. Watching them was obviously very, very good. I mean, there were some brilliant football matches played with Norwich. They relied a lot on late goals. And I think they are very, very open to conceding. I think when you come up against Premier League attackers, that's going to make a massive difference. Not, like as I said, don't get me wrong, I do really enjoy how they played. They could be a 13-14 Liverpool in terms of great going forward, not so good at the back, and it might give them enough to get over that line of relegation and stay up. I don't see it. I think they're going to struggle when they play a lot of the big six. I think they're going to struggle when they play sort of maybe 7 to 15th. I think their fate will maybe decide on how they do against people who are, or teams who are likely to be relegated themselves. You know, if they get a really good run of form against those, then there is obviously a chance for them to stay up. But I think 18th is probably about where they're going to be. It's down to them to prove me wrong. I think decent manager, but we'll see how it goes. So in 17th, we're going to go with Burnley. Now, I think with Sean Dyche, the gravelly voiced manager extraordinaire, will keep them up. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to get relegated. I think on this occasion, I think they've got enough in their squad in order to stay up. I think they've got the experience to stay up. Again, I think they'll struggle to get many points away from home. I think that they are very good at home and they do generate a decent atmosphere there. I just don't see them having a very good season. I think with last year's very short-lived Europa League campaign had a massive impact on their season. I think we saw when they played City towards the back end of last season that they are willing to fight for Sean Dyche, and I think that will be enough to keep them up. So I'm going to go with 17th for Burnley. Okay, so it's 16th. I've gone for Crystal Palace. I think the loss of Wan-Bissaka is going to impact them points-wise. I think that when you lose a defender of that quality, and I think Man United have got an absolute gem there. I think he's a superb right back. I think that with the uncertainty surrounding Wilfried Zaha and the fact that they don't win many games, if any, when he's not present, I think if Wilfried Zaha was to go, then they could be in a relegation battle. As it stands, he may be likely to stay. I think with Arsenal signing Nicolas Pepe, then I'm not overly sure if he's going to be going anywhere. I know Everton have been linked with him. I think that they might be looking for more for Moise Keane. I would absolutely love Wilfried Zaha to join Liverpool. I think he'd be a really, really good player to get in, to alternate with Mane and Salah. But if he stays, then I think they'll probably have enough to stay up, because I think he probably would get them a lot of points on his own. I think defensively they're okay. I think Roy Hodgson's a decent guy. I think that's probably more Roy Hodgson's level, and I think that he's probably got enough in the tank to keep Crystal Palace up. And I think with or without Zaha, they probably will just about make it. Without, I think they'll find it a lot more difficult. With, I think they'll probably finish about 16th, and I think that's where we're going to aim for. We're going to say Palace at 16th. So at 15th, you may recall we've had a few videos already about this football club. We're going to go with Newcastle United at 15th. I think they've done some really, really positive business in terms of getting in the Alain Maxime, Saint Maxime. I think with Joe Linton, I think that there's some very, very positive steps going forward. I think with also Almiron, who I used to love watching him play in the MLS. I thought he was brilliant for Atlanta. I think there's a really, really good basis there for them to be able to score a lot of goals. Unfortunately, I think if you had them players and Rafa, then I think there may be an assault on Europe coming, because I think you would have wanted to strengthen that defence a little bit. But tactically, I think Steve Bruce is inept. I think that maybe this forward line will be enough in terms of grabbing them enough goals, and obviously the depending on boycotts and things like that, I think St James's Park is enough to drag you a few points in every season anyway. I think their fans are phenomenal. So I think that they've probably got enough going forward. I think they're very not poor at the back. I think they've got a very good goalkeeper. Shah's a great defender. I think there's plenty of positives in terms of who they've got in the squad. I really fear for them about who they've got in the dugout, and particularly who they've got in the owner's box. I'll say 15's fair. They could fight relegation. I think what they've done in terms of bringing in the firepower they've done will be enough to keep them away from that. I'm not convinced that Steve Bruce will last the season, and maybe they will bring someone a bit more progressive in. If they do that, then they've probably got a great chance of finishing higher. But I mean, Steve Bruce, I mean, it's a shit show there, isn't it? I mean, I don't fancy them to overperform in any way. I'm delighted they've made some really good signings, but I still think their owner's an absolute bellend. And as it stands for me, it's 15th. So into 14th then, we're going to go with Aston Villa. There is the argument that they've done a Fulham here, and they've brought in far too many players. And I understand that it is a possibility. And if they don't gel relatively quickly, they could find themselves in a real sort of relegation tussle. I think they may be early doors. I'm not sure they're going to get off to a flyer, but I think with the manager they've got, he's obviously a big Villa fan. I think the crowd are behind him. I think that's really important when you're trying to, fight and stay in the division. But I think what they've done differently to Aston Villa is that they've identified areas that needed strengthening. Obviously, getting up through the playoffs is always tricky because you've galvanised a real team spirit. But if you're not good enough to finish top two in the Championship, are you good enough to finish 17th, 16th, 15th, in the Premier League? I think Villa are. I think they've done some really good business. I think that the additions they've made will strengthen that first team, and I think Jack Grealish is better placed playing for Villa than another side at the minute. I know he's linked with Tottenham a window ago and maybe early in this window, but I think that having a guy who's as talented as Jack Grealish in your club and wanting to fight for that club, I am looking forward to seeing how Villa get on. I think they're definitely a team that you want in the Premier League, regardless. They are a solid top flight side, and hopefully, not obviously recently, last couple of seasons, but I hope that they do stay up, and I think they will. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these players gel, and I think they've done really good business. So I'm going to put them at 14th. I do think that they may struggle early, but I think that they've got enough when they gel to pull themselves away from that mire. And I think they'll be safe, come March. I think that they won't be looking down so much. I think from kind of March onwards. So I think a successful comeback for Aston Villa. So at 13th, I've gone with Bournemouth. They haven't massively strengthened either. I think that they're reasonably good at the back. I think their home form plays into a lot of the stuff that they do, the good stuff that they do. I think Eddie Howe is probably the best young British coach out there. I like Bournemouth. I think that they try and play the right way. They try and play a good style of football. And I think 13th is about what you can expect. Look, the ground isn't huge, so commercially they're suffering. But the job that Eddie Howe has done there, bringing them up, keeping them there, I think he's done more than enough to warrant a job elsewhere. I thought that maybe when Chelsea had their vacancy, he might have been a good choice for that. I don't think they've done a bad thing with Lampard, but I think that someone like Eddie Howe could have gone in there and maybe put his mark on the place. Unfortunately, with the transfer ban, it may not have been like that. And would he have got the time? Probably not. So maybe staying at Bournemouth, fighting for getting into the top half of the table is probably whereabouts they lie at the minute. But look, don't get me wrong. You get a good start. You could push Bournemouth a bit further along. I think 13th around about right. Considering the investment the other clubs have made. So, yeah, 13th, Bournemouth. So, on to 12th. I'm going to go with Southampton. Now, a lot of people are tipping them to struggle this season. Now, ordinarily, I would agree, but I think that Ralph Hasenhüttl is a very, very astute coach. I think he can... I think the back end of the season form wasn't too bad. I think that with Danny Ings, if he stays fit, they've got a really accomplished forward there. I think there's a really good chance that they could actually surprise a few teams this season and actually not have to stave off relegation. Now, I know a lot of the time when they get certain players, reasonably good players, they get picked off quite easily. A lot of the time by Liverpool, I hasten to add. But I think that they've got something there, a decent coach, reasonable fans. I think that there's a decent chance that they could have a bit of a crack at it this season. I think that the level that they're at, looking at the squad, would suggest that maybe they will be staving off relegation, but ultimately be safe. But I actually think they'll do one better than that. I think with the coach they've got, I'm backing them to finish a bit higher up, and I'm going to go with Southampton finish 12th. So the final one for this part, and in 11th place, I'm going to go with Watford. I think they've not done dramatic business this window, and for the first time in a while, they've actually stayed consistent with a coach. I think that they will do okay. I don't think they're going to be fighting for the European honours. I think getting to the FA Cup final last season was a massive achievement. I think a lot of that was down to Deulofeu and some very, very good play towards the end of the semi. I don't really see them as a massive threat to the top 10. Now that might disappoint a few Watford fans, I guess, but let's be real. You're establishing yourself as a Premier League side. You've done that over the past couple of seasons, and I think that 11th isn't a bad place to be finishing. It may not be enough for the owners, and there may be an issue with if things don't start too well, then a managerial change. There's always that option there at Watford, because they do tend to go through managers left, right and centre. If that's the case, then it could have a negative effect in terms of they could drop down a bit, or a positive effect, we get new manager bounce and they could jump into the 8th, maybe, I don't think they'll go as high as 7th, but 8th to 10th maybe. But as it stands, and with the business that's being done so far and how I see Watford, I would say 11th is a very decent position for them to be in, and that's where I see them. So that's our 20th to 11th. We really hope you enjoyed this. If your club is there and you don't think they should be, comment down below. If you think your club isn't there and you think they maybe have over exaggerated their capabilities, then definitely get that in there as well in the comments. And so please like, comment, subscribe, and head over now to part 2, which will be 10th to 1st, and we'll see how things pan out there at the top end of the Premier League. As always, been a pleasure having you here. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later on. I'm Dante. Take care.